All right.
After
So
10 years,
what's going on? I was your host, Hugo Fernandez. And I was Nora Jones cover of the George Harrison song, which now escapes me. This is what's going on. This is I turned 60, and I don't remember things. Let me in you. Maybe Chris will tell me. Type it in, Chris, to help me remember. But we got a special show today. Brought back our former president and provost of College, Paul Arcario, and Professor Kunum of the Department of Social Science. And they're here to discuss the work they're doing mindfulness education in first-year seminars and beyond. Let me in you. I'd have you anytime. There you go. Which is actually the first cut off of. I was telling Paul earlier about the, All Things Must Pass, which is this great first album that George Harrison made after leaving the Beatles. I think of Harrison as, again, as far as pop culture is concerned, the first to bring the East to the West during that tumultuous time of the '60s. Welcome.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
And Paul, you've been on my show a couple times?
Yes. Yeah. A couple of times.
So we're going to start with Kuhn and give her an opportunity to tell us a little bit about her background, her studies, and life before coming to LaGuardia.
Yeah. Thank you. By the way, it's my very first time to be in any type of show. So yeah. I'm very excited and nervous at the same time. Hi, everyone. My name is Kuhn. I teach psychology in the social science department. And by my training, I'm a counseling psychologist. So I learned about how to provide therapy and how to conduct research to promote and enhance mental health field. So that's my background. And since my master's program, which is clinical psychology at the Murray State University, as well as my doctoral program, which is University of Florida in counseling psychology program, I have mostly worked with college student population. So most of my training for clinical practice, including full-time internship and postdoc residency, occurred at university counseling centers. So I've been always working with college students, and those are my passionate population. And I'm very excited to incorporate research and practice here at LaGuardia by collaborating with former provost Paul Arcario, Dr. Arcario, and my other colleague who are involved in the mindfulness project. And interestingly, as you can tell from my accent, I was not born here, so I came here as an international student. And since then, I have lived in various very different states. So first started from Kentucky and then moved to Florida to do my doctoral program, moved to Ohio to do my full-time internship there, and then moved to Texas to complete my postdoc residency, and then finally moved to Idaho. And there I was an assistant professor doing therapy and teaching at the same time. And then finally I moved to New York. So I felt like I got a taste of different state within the US continent before I came here. Yeah, that's a short background about me.
Yeah, no, that's good. Of all those places you lived, is there any particular favorite, or are we your favorite?
You know what? As you can tell, right, each states are very different and unique in their own way. So for Moscow, Idaho, where I was in right before LaGuardia, that I consider it as my hometown. Somehow I love the rural area and the spirit and the welcoming and open small community feeling. But at the same time, I mean, who to say that they don't like Florida? They have everything: lake, sea, and Disneyland and everything. So it's really hard to tell. But there's a reason that I ended up deciding to spend the rest of my life, I hope, in New York because of its diversity and energy in the city.
Yeah, actually, my wife went to University of Florida.
Oh, really?
She was a Gator gal. Whatever, I don't know if you've ever gone to any of the sports events, but she was like one of the kind of a cheerleader.
Oh, yeah.
New York to become a famous actress.
Right. When I was there, UF won the national championship for football, college football. So.
Yeah, they're always winning stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a very great athletic program. And in fact, and of course, invented my favorite drink, Gatorade.
Ah,
So, Dr. Arcario,
Yes.
what got you to come out of? I mean, you had just retired, and then the next thing we knew, you were running this program. So, you want to talk about how you found yourself, coming at this?
Well, I started meditating myself. I guess maybe 2.5 years ago or so, and I found it tremendously helpful. It was a very challenging time in my life. I was interim president here, and then back as provost during the pandemic, which, as we all know, was challenging for all of us, and a very challenging time for me, and also personally. I just had a deep personal loss in my life, so there was a lot going on, and I needed some support. And I found meditation. It was something that was extremely beneficial to me. And also, I love studying. I really do believe in lifelong learning. We use that phrase a lot, but it's something that enriches me. So I'm now got a certification as a mindfulness meditation instructor. Also been studying Buddhism for the last 1.5 years. And just before I left, back in, I guess, April, May, June, an opportunity came up. There was a grant application for the College Completion Innovation Fund from Graduate New York City. And we had gotten the money from them before to do the LaGuardia app, actually. And, Eric was terrifically supportive. And we talked about, this might be, we were looking, how could we incorporate mindfulness, into the college here. And so we applied to that grant. It was a very challenging process to get that grant, including a lot of interviews with the funders. And we were very fortunate to get the funding. And that's when I retired, but I decided to stay on. I'm now a non-teaching adjunct.
You've done it all.
I've done it all. And so I usually come down to the college 5 times a semester to do the workshops with the faculty. We'll talk more about that, I guess, when we get into it a little bit deeply. But I'm also thrilled to be working with Kuhn and also Ellen Quish, who is deeply involved, and Dima Bayraktar, deeply involved. And of course, Eric has been very supportive. So it's great for me. It's a whole new a new chapter for me, and yet it still connects to the college, and I'm thrilled to be able to have it in my life.
Dr. What was your connection with meditation or mindfulness? And at some point, we're going to have to kind of uncouple those two, so unless you feel they're like the same thing. You'll have to explain to me what the difference is between the meditative practice and the mindfulness practice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What's your own experience with meditation and mindfulness?
Sure. So one of the common misunderstanding out there is that mindfulness is something that mostly Buddhists would do, but not really. We are talking about mindfulness meditation, which is totally secular and has been widely incorporated in psychotherapy as well. So when I was first introduced to the concept of mindfulness, it was during my first year in the doctoral program, and there was a workshop about mindfulness. And I had no idea what is mindfulness, other than I had to attend there to get the bonus credit and whatever, right? So that was my first introduction to mindfulness. And then I was like, oh, that's a very interesting concept. And as a non-Buddhist, I always believed that mindfulness is related to what monk and nun would do, but really it's not. And then soon after that, I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to take an elective course offered by my doctoral program. I guess that's the first and the last time to provide that program, because they earned some external fund to teach doctoral students to just focus on how to incorporate mindfulness into psychotherapy and research. So I was lucky enough to get the specialized training about that. And since then, the more I get involved in treatment as an independent practitioner, is during the time that mindfulness became really popular among mental health professionals in terms of conducting it as a part of psychotherapy. So I have used mindfulness, pretty much in most of my cases, here and there. And then, that's how I got involved clinically. And once I moved to LaGuardia, I was lucky enough to earn some funding through the CUNY Research Center to actually conduct the effectiveness of mindfulness among non-traditional college students. So I have completed data collection, and that's how Paul knew that I'm involved in this concept, and I got connected and joined this special project.
So, Dr. Carey, you cast in this as a result of your own oversight of the faculty. You knew this was something that.
Yes, because I knew she had gotten the PSC CUNY grant, and one of the wonderful things about as provost being in personnel and budget is I see everybody's yearly write-ups, and I learned so much about who's involved in what. And as things would come up, I would say, oh, I remember Kuhn was interested, and let me contact her. So it sort of helped me at the time also to connect with people. So yeah.
So we're actually gonna try doing a short meditation led by Dr. In this next quarter hour. But before we do that, did you want to? I don't know. Dr. already kind of explained it. When we talk about mindfulness, we think of it as secular, as opposed to meditation, which people think of it as having some religious connotation. I mean, is that the case? Mm-hmm. Or what is the difference?
Well, did you want to explain it, or do you want me?
Well, I look at it this way. Mindfulness, basically, you can do things mindfully. To me, mindfulness is having your attention in the present moment. So we talk about doing things mindfully, eating mindfully, or doing an activity where you're fully present with what you're doing. Meditation is also basically, to me, a practice to develop that ability to bring your attention to the present, normally by focusing on some kind of an anchor or home base that brings you into the present. Traditionally, it was focusing on the breathing, on the breath, but it doesn't have to be that. You could focus on sound, you could focus on an object, many things. So mindfulness to me is a practice to strengthen your ability to be present. I don't know, Kuhn,
yeah,
you think
I totally agree. Yeah, mm-hmm. To me, mindfulness is the way that you approach your life. So it's not just about technique to me, it's more about the attitude where you choose to fully participate in the present moment. Without that intentionality, we are naturally geared towards to thinking about the future. Like for instance, instead of just focusing on what am I talking here, I might think about, okay, what should I do after this show, right? That's non-mindfulness. So for me, it's an intentional choice to participate in the present moment with your full attention. And also, another important aspect of mindfulness is being an open observer without being judgmental. So to me, it's about the attitude and the way you approach your life. And like what Dr. Acario said, there are a couple of actual mindfulness exercise that you implement this attitude through breathing or listening to sound, or there are even walking and eating meditation. So, which to me, even though I'm not a Buddhist, so I do not quite well know what Buddhist meditation would be like, but I assume that it's something related to, I don't know, connecting to the supernatural being, or something like that. I could be wrong, but so there is no religious flavor when we say mindfulness practice or mindfulness meditation in our context.
Right. And I don't know. Tell me if I'm jumping the gun here, but because our student population, we're pretty clear that come from a lot of traumatic backgrounds and probably suffer from things like PTSD, which makes it very difficult to concentrate. I speak for myself too, because I always identify with our students that, I mean, when I'm in three places at once when somebody is talking a lot of times. And the fact that we've incorporated this, because even when we were putting together the name of the show, I mean, I've experienced this in the first year seminars when I did a trial run of the meditation that they're asking folks to have students do before they do the new faculty observations, the new faculty assessments by student assessment, which again goes back to what Dr. was saying, this thing about non-judgment. What was the phrase you used?
It's radical acceptance.
Open.
So yeah.
Open, basically, I saw it as like trying to have a little bit of compassion for your teacher before you proceed to, tear them apart or whatever it is. So, I mean, that's not an accident, right?
Yeah, definitely. And speaking of the PTS, like, yes, if you have traumatic experiences, a practice of mindfulness might be something that could be done under the guidance of counselor or somebody who has expertise in guiding the process itself. But if you think about the actual treatment of PTSD or even anxiety disorders per se, the eventual goal is to help the patient feel comfortable with the memory of that incident. That usually people cover it with like numbing or substances or difficult feelings because fully experiencing that recollection or memory is not something that they can handle. So it's kind of coping mechanism to a certain degree. But if you think about mindfulness, once again, it should be conducted under the guidance of therapists in case of PTSD. But the real goal is pretty similar, because if you think about the real concept of mindfulness, it's about letting yourself be fully present in the present experiences instead of numbing it or shutting it down or distracting it. So the more you invite this life attitude in other area, eventually, if you work with a therapist, you'll be able to let yourself just be comfortable with whatever past memory that pops up in the present moment.
Dr. Carey, did you want to add something before we do this mindfulness demo meditation?
Let me just quickly add, since you brought up while we're on this topic, and Kuhn, as a clinical psychologist, also worked with our wellness center, and we've come up with, there's a statement that the faculty receive in case someone, in the class, we don't force any of the students to do it, they can opt out, but in case something comes up, this can also sort of be a gateway to the wellness center, because we have certain, we have services like that. So I don't think it's really happened yet, but we also have kind of prepared that as well. So.
So we wanted to do in this quarter hour, we wanted to try to do a little mini meditative experience, and Dr. is going to lead us. Somebody's got a gong.
I have my Tibetan singing bowl.
So the two of you are on. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. So earlier when I explained what mindfulness is, I explained that it's about your attitude to your life, and it's about making an intentional effort, right? To be a full participant of the present moment. So the reason that we love gong is that it's sort of like signals that, yes, it's a signal that we decide to make ourselves fully be present in the present moment rather than thinking about the future or thinking about the past. So it's kind of a signal to alert us that, okay, it's time to set an intention and choose to be here in the present moment. Okay. Another thing that might be important to notice is this radical acceptance and being a curious observer part. So if you observe something, you do not change anything, right? You do not manipulate anything, right? You just choose to be there and make a full attention to notice what is going on in the present moment. And that's what we are trying to do here. So long story short, what we are going to do is that we are going to do breathing. We already know how to breathe, right? But the difference between quote unquote deep breathing technique in therapy and mindfulness breathing is that in deep breathing technique, your therapist will instruct you to manipulate your breath so that you intentionally move your lower belly, right? In mindfulness breathing, yes, that would be ideal, but instead of changing your breathing, you choose to fully observe your current breathing. Does this make sense? Right. So we usually encourage that as you breathe in and out, think about notice where you feel your breathing. To some, to me, it's usually this area, nose. To some, it's their belly. Okay. For others, it can be something else, but choose an anchor area and then keep redirecting your attention to your breathing. It's okay. You don't feel like you're doing it correctly. It's not about making an evaluation. Choose to redirect your attention to what is going on in your breathing. Okay. And if you have any passing thought, that's totally fine. That's the power of your observation. So simply observe that, oh, I had a passing thought, and then redirect your attention to your anchor, which is your breathing. Okay? So thank you, Dr. Alcario, for volunteering the gonging. So once he starts gonging, I'm gonna guide you for 30 seconds with my verbal instruction, and then we'll keep silence and do our own mindfulness breathing for another 2 minutes. So in total of 2 minutes and 30 seconds, we practice this together. Do you feel like 2 minutes is something that you can do, Hugo? Yes. So let's give it a try. There is no right or wrong way to do it. So Paul, will you ring the gong? Yeah. So now we choose to be fully present in the present moment. If it helps, you are welcome to close your eyes. If not, it's okay to open your eyes, but make a soft gaze. Okay? And then now let's pay a full attention to our breathing. Where do you feel your breathing in your body? It can be your belly, your chest area, or it can be your nostril. Notice how the air enters into your nostril, goes down, down, deep to your belly. Notice you're breathing out of your nostril. Notice how your belly goes up. Notice how it goes down. If you have any passing thought, simply acknowledge it and then choose to pay attention to your breathing again. Breathe in and breathe out. Breathe in and breathe out. Notice how it feels in your body. Notice how the air feels as it enters your body and as it goes out. Breathe in and breathe out. With curiosity, notice what is going on. How your belly moves, how you feel in your nostril or in other areas of your body. But always bring your attention back to your breathing. Breathe in and breathe out. For the next 2 minutes, we'll do breathing in our own pace, in silence. let's slowly return back to the present moment from your meditation. I'm curious if you feel comfortable. What's it like for you to practice it?
Well, at some point I started thinking what would happen if somebody just tuned in. And I'm going to use this as an opportunity to do the station break, which is you're watching. The show is called What's Going On Fernandez here on LaGuardia Web Radio. And today we're with the former interim president and provost of LaGuardia Community College, Paul Arcario, and Professor Kunum of the Department of Social Science. And we are here to discuss their work with mindfulness education in the first year seminars and beyond, and just finished a mindfulness meditation. I mean, for me, one of the hardest things is to stay focused on the breathing. And I've certainly had a lot of episodes of going in and out of that. Right. So, to be honest, but it's good. And it reminds me, because one of the things I said to Dr. Arcario was that because he usually does these on Wednesday nights at 8. I tell him, like, if I did this, I'd fall asleep. My bedtime is like 8 o'clock, believe it or not. And what was your answer to me at the time, Dr. Arcario?
I don't know. I should have said you could join Dima on Thursdays at noon.
Oh,
because she's adding it. But I will say this, Hugo. The way you describe it, it's not about stopping the train of thought or the mind from thinking. Your mind is built to think. It's about, as Kuhn said, observing it. So typically what you will do in the course of a meditation is that's exactly what will happen. You wander off and you just, gently come back. You wander off, come back. Think of it like, curling weights. Except it's a mental exercise. Every time you bring your mind back, that's actually the meditation practice. That's actually giving you this mental strength. So it's what you're doing is perfectly the process.
There's no wrong in a sense. We wanted to use this quarter hour to really do a deep dive into the program itself. So I don't know who would like to start and talk about, the actual work you're doing in these workshops and with the grant.
Well, I'll start maybe with a little bit of an overview of the grant. It's a 2-year grant, so we have 4 semesters. We're in the second semester, and when we wrote the grant, we positioned it to be for first-year seminar. Although we just had a meeting with the grant funders, and because requests from faculty who are not in first-year seminar, and they've agreed to allow us to open it up, which we will be doing the next time around. Not just for first-year seminar. So for our last semester, we had 10 faculty teaching the first-year seminar, across a variety of disciplines. And basically, the 10 faculty teaching 1 or 2 sections of FYS. We have a professional development seminar for them of 5 sessions. We've been working with UCLA's Mindfulness Center because we are using the UCLA free app, Mindfulness app. We decided to use an app because we're not going into we don't have time to go into real depth to have each of the faculty get an incredible amount of training in mindfulness. So the app serves as the guide for that. It has, I think, 7 or 8 types of meditations on it, from 3 minutes to 9 minutes. So we are using the app. We've had the director of the UCLA Center, Diana Winston, did a few workshops for us as well. So that's sort of the big picture of it. Like most grants, what they're looking for is to increase persistence and ultimately, retention. And we really felt that so many students are facing anxiety and stress and inability to concentrate sometimes, especially leading out from the pandemic, but also the first semester in college. When we wrote the grant, data from the Wellness Center was showing 81% of the students who show up in our Wellness Center were there for anxiety. And there's a whole host of research that's been done showing the benefits of mindfulness for anxiety, concentration, reduction of stress, and that type of thing. So I'll stop for a minute and Koon, let you add in.
Yeah, I mean, I think Paul provided very nice overview of our program. And in terms of the therapy, if you think about why mindfulness is so beneficial to reduce anxiety, stress, and depression, those kind of stuff, is that those kind of emotional issues mostly stem from the fact that instead of fully experiencing their emotion and process it, like as a coping mechanism, people choose to cover it, right? Because I mean, it's too much for them to experience it. But the thing about the emotion is that unless you experience and process it, it will not go away. So if you think about the concept of mindfulness, it really helps you to gradually experience what is going on that without necessarily covering it up or distracting yourself. So that's why for anxiety, stress, and depression, which are common factors in the literature, identified as an impact factor related to retention rate. So that's why mindfulness practice on a regular basis will eventually reduce depressed mood or anxious feelings, those kind of issues. So that we earned the grant to introduce it to our student population, especially like if you think about our student population, it's not just about they have to come here and take courses and enjoy college life. Most of them are from low-income family, have job, or they could have children or other major responsibility as they complete their educational goal. So they typically have additional challenges compared to quote-unquote traditional college student. So we hope that this program really helps them to do daily self-care activities so that they reduce anxiety and stress and those kind of stuff as they pursue their life in a positive way.
So to speak like a funder, sorry, go ahead, Paul.
Just if I may just dovetail that a little bit. In mindfulness work, a word that's used a lot is spaciousness. And when you think, well, if you have an anxious thought or feeling, and many of our students have feelings, can I do this? Am I, this is really for me? Can I be? These thoughts, and when you're anxious and stressful, they're right in your face. You have no room around them. You don't have the thought has you, right? That kind of thing. And you're in the grip of it. And when you think, if you're practicing whatever comes up, just observing it, letting it be there, what starts to happen is you get a sense of space around it. It's hard to put it in words, but you can feel that. And when you get some of that space, then, you may find that the feelings lessen, or you may also find that you can take appropriate action. You might say, oh, maybe I'm going to go to therapy. Maybe I'm going to go to the wellness center for this. You might, rather than just bury it all. So that's kind of how I view it as well. And
exactly. Yeah. If you think about anxiety, most of the time you feel overwhelmed because it's kind of, very vague feeling. You just know that it's deep and huge. Therefore, you choose to you have to avoid it or distract yourself and etc. But if you create a space and observe your experience of feeling anxious, this becomes more clear, more tangible, more manageable, if this makes sense. Yeah.
So as speaking like a funder, what would the outcomes be? How are you measuring the effectiveness of the work? Didn't expect that, huh?
No. Oh, are you kidding? The funder, that was the first thing they asked.
Well, if you expect it from a funder, you don't expect it from
I expect it from you, and actually, fortunately for us, Koon had already been working on it because she had a grant on this and developed a pre and post survey for us, right? So we're doing that, and we're also looking at. So there's a weekly. So let me just say how this is set up. So we're using, because it's first year seminar, we have the advantage of using the SSMs, right? The peers. And so the faculty do something each week in the seminar. Usually they'll have a little talk about it, or they'll do something, 5 minutes, 10 minutes. We don't expect it to take up the whole seminar. The SSMs in the studio hour will take once a week, 5 minutes, and they do an online check-in where the students, we keep track of how many times they've meditated that week. Because the biggest challenge with this, I feel, is encouraging the students to develop an ongoing practice. If you do it once a week, and it's like if you went to the gym once a month, it's not doing too much, right? So they have to actually record how often they practice. They have a little indicating how they're feeling that week. They have the spot for questions, and then all that check-in information goes back, to the faculty. So one of the things we're looking at is, did we actually increase the number of times students meditated? And for those who did do it and versus those who did not really do it, what are the differences in the pre and post in terms of measures of concentration, lessening stress, lessening anxiety? And Kuhn, what were the three that we saw in the...
So we tested anxiety, concentration, and self-compassion.
Right.
And all of them, even though if you think about the literature, this kind of outcome is expected, but when it comes to your own research, you're curious about, okay, does this really work or not when you run the statistics? And we are very glad to learn that actually for our student population, doing regular practice significantly reduce the levels of anxiety, concentration, and self-compassion. And all of them are identified as an important factor related to retention in the retention literature.
Right. Self-compassion increased.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So Hugo, of course, the next question will be, over time, does that translate into helping the students stay in school and be successful? I mean, that's what the funder ultimately wants to know. And of course, we'll track it. Of course, it's feeding into, there's so many factors that go into a student's ability, but this is something we'll be tracking.
Well, it's interesting. If you're going to talk about data and actions and outcomes, anything we do for our students is going to increase retention in some sense. The question is, can we isolate the impact of this particular work in helping our students in the process? It's tough because I think anything we can do for our students is going to encourage them to stick around and work with us. But that wasn't the next question I was going to ask. I was actually going to ask about, but I guess you're talking as the funder, and that's what the funder would ask, is, how did COVID fit into all of this? The whole, what happened with us? Was this a response to COVID, or did it just so happened that we were going through this? Because you did talk, Dr. Carey, you talked a little bit about your history with it, and Dr. As well. Has been kind of dedicated her life to this kind of work. But here came COVID, and so how did that work?
Well, I think that I think for sure. And I think CUNY I don't know if CUNY's actually collected data on this, and certainly reports of our students going to the Wellness Center. And I think we can say with a lot of certainty that it was increased anxiety, for sure, right, over the period. And right now I know CUNY's been looking a lot. They've been wrestling with this idea of re-engaging students across CUNY. I think there's a lot of work going on right now with that. Because everybody's life and routine was, upended, massively. So I think this would be a good program, even if there had not been COVID, but I think COVID makes it maybe a little more important.
More urgent.
Yeah.
Sense. One of the things that keeps coming to me is this idea. I'm on the ground, right? And one of the things that you experience as we're walking through the streets on our way to the campus is the fact that now with the legalization of marijuana, you smell a lot of it. And I think all this time about my students showing up, as you said, medicated, and I don't know how they do it. I tried it myself. I was unsuccessful. I'm talking about when I was a student. So I know how it's counterproductive. But it goes back to this idea Dr. Room was talking about, self-medicating, and this really is calling for a very different approach, because we know why they're doing it. That again, for a person to try to live their life medicated, and we're talking about school, which is one of the most important things they're doing. They're trying. There's something they're trying to get away from, whatever that is. So I think this is really a great opportunity as an alternative. And historically, they were both mixed together. You know, if you think about the 60s culture,
Yes.
the patient showed up at the same time, but nobody remembers that the Beatles had done all of their experimentations with drugs before they ran off to India
Mm-hmm.
with the Maharishi. And even Allen Ginsberg, who was a big believer in a Buddhist and meditated,
Right.
all talked about it as an alternative to the LSD movement at the time, which was recreational. I mean, there's obviously stuff that's going on now, which is the clinical work toward, you know, for some of the same issues. So, but the fact that we're offering this to our students at such a young age, or an opportunity as to counteract what the
Mm-hmm.
opposite behavior is pretty groundbreaking, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Isn't it?
I think so. It's a good point that you're making.
We're actually, by the way, in that part of the hour where we talk about the future. We got the last 15 minutes, and we have a little bit of music at the end, and we're going to say thank yous and goodbyes. But let's talk about the future of this program. You already mentioned a little bit that you know, we're opening it up now beyond the first year seminar. So, but what else did you want to talk about the future of this program?
Well, one thing I'd like to add that I've been working on in the last 6 months, and I was contacted. So there is a group at CUNY, across CUNY. I'm working with them, and we've just created the CUNY Mindfulness and Contemplative Studies group, which is now in the Academic Commons. We had our first gathering in March with about 90 people from across CUNY. And basically, we're looking to network. There's a lot of mindfulness work happening across CUNY. I've met someone from CCNY who's been spearheading this group, and he's looking at replicating our program at CCNY, which I think would be fantastic. There is a new graduate certificate program just came online or is about to just come online. I think it was just approved at Lehman, and the person who has developed that is in our group. So I think there's actually a lot happening across CUNY, and I had the chance to present our program at the gathering. So I'm looking for, you know, connections and synergies across CUNY. My Wednesday night and Dima's Thursday afternoon, we're actually going to open CUNY-wide. And there's someone who's doing it at Kingsborough on Monday. So we're going to open that CUNY-wide as well and really see what kind of a network. So I'm kind of excited about that.
Dr. Room?
Yeah, I really hope that even though it started as a recognition of being the first year student, having additional challenges, I think that what we are trying to do is really cultivate the campus culture of mindfulness, not just limited to first year seminar. So we hope that the more like we advertise this program, and recently we offered a pop-up event. So we just like offer this pop-up like event where like I led eating meditation, Paul did mindfulness breathing, and etc. So we had a lot of fun. And the more we introduce and advertise this program, my hope is that our campus itself actually have this common, right, language of mindfulness in their life.
Right. And also, Kun and I were invited. We did a presentation for the President's Society. So for any listeners out there, if you are interested, you know, we have 4 of us who are willing to come and introduce you to mindfulness meditation. Happy to do that. As Kun says, we think it would be an important part of our culture here at the college. I think it really fits in with our goals of, you know, mutual compassion and kindness and caring for each other and paying attention to well-being. I think it can be an important part of that.
Maybe tie it in with the environmental folks who are trying to shut down 29th Street.
Mm-hmm.
Create this, you know, different environment for the college.
Yes.
Those things dovetail well. There was something, another question I was going to add about this, but so is there any connection between the work that you're doing and, again, going back to this, the new student evaluations of faculty, which contain this meditative, I don't know if you've experienced this, but there's there's basically a guided meditation to prepare students to get them in the right place.
Well, when I brought the group together, I mean, I said, we want to do one, let's do our own internal evaluation. And actually, I don't think I brought the group together. I think people volunteered. And part of it was they wanted to have some type of a pre-training for students before they give them some context for doing this. And it might have been Justin from Health Science. I can't remember who came up with the idea of doing a mindfulness piece. But I remember they wanted to do that. I haven't actually seen it because I left before that. It's been right. Is it actually being used already? I don't know.
I did a demo of it last summer, and in fact, I have student evaluations here, which I have to forward, I think, to Justin, and I haven't done that. But because I was teaching first year seminar as kind of a stand-in for other folks in a model that I wasn't used to, and I was kind of taken back by how much preparation went into the process before students were being asked to, fill these things out, and wondered again, I'd be interested to see how students respond to the whole because
I think so, yeah. But
New York is very cynical. New Yorkers are very cynical. I mean, the notion that CUNY, the largest urban university right in the world, would find itself as the epicenter of this kind of mindfulness meditation in a city that we think of as constantly being, the center of chaos.
It's interesting, right?
It's very ironic.
Yes. Well, I love the idea that the group, and again, I didn't, that was their idea to really, prepare the students. But when I think about it, I think a lot of it is about having the students do the faculty evaluation in a mindful manner, not just like, I got to do this and whatever. It's like mindfully means where you're paying attention, you're really reading the questions, you really take a minute to reflect. What was that like? Not just boom, 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 boom. So I think if you have the students doing it in a more mindful fashion, I think that was really the idea.
I also enjoyed the compassion piece.
Yes.
To it, which was to get people to think and like somebody else, like what's the experience like for even though we're surrounded by people, we insulate.
Mm-hmm.
And, we never take into thought like what's the experience like for this other person.
Yeah.
And Dr. Oon, you mentioned that's one of your goals, right? Compassion is on the list.
Mm-hmm. Because the more you practice mindfulness, a lot of people experience increased sense of connection to nature and to others, really building a sense of universal connection, which is sort of like what happens when you cultivate your own self-compassion. And actually, if you do the literature search, one of the main, I think I forgot all of the three components, but in fact, one of the three major components of self-compassion is mindfulness.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to check myself because I've been going through a lot lately, and you find yourself in a compassionate mind thinking, but I have to remember that not everybody's on the same page when you're on the train and you want to get. My wife and daughter are constantly trying to rein me in from, being too friendly to strangers. But I think it's that in a goal in and of itself. If we could teach compassion as an outcome in our in our system, man, that's how you change the world, right?
Well, as Kuhn said, it's something that seems to emerge quite often from mindfulness and a meditation practice. Self-compassion and compassion for others. It whatever that mechanism is, it definitely seems to emerge. So
we're starting to run out of time, and I wanted to give the two of you an opportunity to say anything you haven't had a chance to say yet, and or folks you want to thank or mention. So who would like to start? Dr. Oom?
Yeah, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me and have an opportunity to share this project. Mindfulness may not be to everyone, but at least my strong invitation is that you may want to give it a try at least once or twice before you decide whether or not this is something that you want to continue to give it a try. So there will be a lot of invitation and events that will help you to get the experience of mindfulness practice. And I hope that you give it a try at least once and see how it goes.
Yeah. And I just another quick shout out to Ellen and Dima, who are 100% partners in this, and Eric for his support, and the faculty who have participated so far, who have really put their, as they always do, put their whole hearts into it, and the students too. We've brought students in; they've been great to be panelists, at the workshops, and it's very very exciting to see them sort of grab onto this. So. Thank you, and thank you. Yes, Hugo, thank you for having us. Thank you, Christopher.
Yeah, and we got to thank Dima. I mean, I'm at the point right now, I have so much going on that, I've gone through a period where the shows are coming to me now. Dima approached me about this idea, and, I was like, let's do it. So again, I wondered how we'd handle it if we do this kind of meditative act. As part of it. So I want to thank Demon and the folks at the Center of Teaching and Learning, Ellen Quish and Eric. I guess Eric will never lose that hat, right? They've bringing this to us has been great. And you're working with some of the best people at the college. So how can you lose?
Of course.
But I want to thank you both for being here, and thank you for this kind of work you're doing. I think it's important. I think it's important work. It's as important as, the competencies and abilities, right? Even as important as e-portfolio. I think that if we can,
I think it's very important.
We need to fix. We might need to. I keep talking. People, I bring this up at different meetings that we need a new vision summit to just look at what we're doing and how we're. But it'd be interesting to work this into our mission as well. To mindful, to be. As well as diverse and brilliant, we, our students be mindful.
Yeah.
Okay, so for those of you who are watching, the show is What's Going On. I'm your host, Hugo Fernandez. And today we've had the former interim president and provost of LaGuardia Community College, Paul Arcario, Dr. Arcario, and Professor Akunum of the Department of Social Science to discuss their work education in the first year seminars, and we have talked about even beyond, and there's a lot of beyond. And I would hope, what's the chance that the grant will be renewed and you can keep doing this work beyond the 2 years? Is it good?
I don't know if this I don't know, but I think that there are always other opportunities for funding too. I don't know if this particular grant is renewable or not, but I think there are other opportunities out there always.
Thank you both for being on the show. Thanks for everybody for watching and listening. And Mr. Pope, take us out with George Harrison.